Another day, another recap. Today we'll be diving into the movie franchise recap of Escape Room. This will include both Escape Room as well as Escape Room Tournament of Champions. Without further ado, make sure to put your feet up and relax because this one's going to shock you. The first movie opens up with a man falling through the roof into a room. Panicking and injured, he rushes to the door and spots 10 numbers and only 4 spots. However, the room behind him begins moving and closing in on him. Looking for clues to open the door, he finds something saying to follow the light to greener pastures. Looking around the room, he spots a green book about to be lost behind the wall and barely manages to grab it as he falls. Looking into it, the man deciphers a clue about watching another man die and stares at a picture to find the numbers he's been searching for. Rushing to the door, he inputs number after number, and as everything crashes around him, he completes the code, but nothing happens. Banging on the door and screaming with the room closing in, he smacks on the roof and yells for help. However, the room does not stop, and he is killed in the most brutal way. Elsewhere in Chicago, Illinois, Zoe Davis walks to her class 3 days prior to what just unfolded. It also seems that Zoe is quite a bit shy to answer the questions her professor dishes out. Thanking his class, he bids them a good holiday but gets Zoe to stay behind. He tells her that her paper on quantum mechanics was brilliant, yet she refuses to answer the questions in class and wants her to speak up more and to do something that scares her during the break. While all this takes place, a rich, smart, and arrogant stockbroker that goes by the name Jason Walker speaks to his clients over and over. Elsewhere, the young man from the beginning named Ben goes to his boss Gary and asks for a pay rise. However, he is told that he cannot work on the tills and points to his method of unwinding. Back with our stockbroker, he receives a gift thanking him for always thinking outside the box. Not really caring of opening the box, he chucks it to Charlie and leaves. Back at college, Allison asks Zoe if she wants to come to hers for Thanksgiving but is told no, that she'd rather stay and have fun with her projects. Once her roommate leaves though, the entire room begins to shake, and just as panic sets in, Zoe awakens from her nightmare. Her friend actually goes to leave for real this time but finds a package outside for Zoe from her professor. Upon opening it, the letter says open new doors, and the same black box handed to Jason earlier is given to her. Ben in the meantime gets to work and also finds the black box gifted to him, telling him a chance to escape. All 3 individuals figure out how to open the box when a little opening unlocks. Spending the entire day, all 3 of them eventually crack the code and the box goes back to normal. Suddenly a little note comes out explaining they have been accepted to Minnow's escape rooms, and if they are successful in escaping, they will win $10,000. The following day, Ben stands outside the Minnow's building when Amanda Harper arrives and seems to be another player that solved the box. Immediately walking inside the building, the guard takes her ID and after putting a name tag on her, asks for her phone. She accepts and walks away when she is told thank you for your service. Sounding quite ominous, she nonetheless continues and is joined by Danny. Sneaking in a second phone, the two make their way into the waiting room where Mike introduces himself to Amanda. The group get to know one another, which also includes Ben. Amanda then proceeds to read the paper, and the main story is that 5 people were burned alive. Danny interjects himself into the current conversation and mentions that he's completed 93 rooms before. He also informs the group that this escape room was rated the highest in the country, and with a $10,000 pass rate, the company's website mentions no one has managed to pass it yet. Ben then gets up to go for a walk when the door handle breaks off and someone watches them. Danny immediately jumps up and says he thinks this is the escape room. Noticing the door is a combination lock, Danny instructs the room to go searching for clues. Everyone immediately gets up and begins searching everything in the room. Zoe quickly discovers a mug saying we know you have a choice. Amanda simultaneously discovers a clue with all books there being addressed to Dr. Wooten Yu. Mike then finds a star-head screwdriver, and with all the clues in front of them, Zoe notices a book named Fahrenheit 451. After inputting 451 on the door's lock, the roof lights up red and emits quite some heat. Problematically now, the lock on the door will not budge from its number. Amanda asks Danny what they should do, and he replies saying there is always one hint allowed. Amanda and Jason approach the receptionist desk and ask for their hint, only to be told someone will be with them shortly. Zoe is very suspicious as the voice sounds off. Weirdly enough, Jason picks up a snow globe and is fascinated by it when he tells everyone there is a lock. Ben goes to break it with a fire extinguisher and rips it off the wall when he discovers the extinguisher is fake. But because of that, the walls begin to emit heat, and the participants begin to suspect that something is off. Zoe simultaneously finds keys on the fire extinguisher and goes to open the window where Jason stops her. Mike, however, shuts him up, and Zoe opens the glass mirror to reveal a doll. The phone inside the room begins ringing, and Jason grabs it to hear a woman on the other side welcoming them to the escape room and to follow all the posted rules. After slamming the phone down, the heat in the room immediately increases, and shutters cover the outside light, leaving the room red. Amanda immediately begins panicking, and the group tries to calm her down when fans open up and push the heat all around the room. Zoe grabs Amanda a cup of water and notices burn marks all over her neck. The others continue looking around the room when Zoe finds a message saying to use coasters at all times. She then goes to the table and presses a sort of button which opens up a vent. Upon letting go, it closes, and so 4 of the participants press on 6 buttons and the vent fully opens up. Jason is the first person that intends on going through, and the group agrees. Getting inside it, Jason crawls through the vents and after a little time screams he found a way out but needs the screwdriver from earlier. Mike goes to give it to him as the heat intensifies. Soon enough, the exit passage is opened and the group is told to come in. Amanda is the first to go through and does so with great fear. Zoe simultaneously gets an idea and begins putting cups of water onto the buttons. It works and Amanda cries and gets a memory of when she was in the army and injured. The trauma hits hard and Zoe goes to help her. The others fill up the cups with water, and Zoe tells Amanda she isn't stuck. The others problematically run out of water due to Amanda drinking some up. The light on the roof meanwhile turns into a death machine, and with only 2 left in the room, Ben takes out his own drink and pours it into the cup, which makes it work. The 2 quickly rush into the vent as the room burns, and completely becomes engulfed in flames, which almost hits the last 2 as they join the others. With all their hearts racing, Amanda immediately heads to the camera and demands to be let out. Not being listened to, Amanda demands Danny's second phone to call the cops. However, there is no service. While the team talk to one another, Jason already discovers the key for the lock and is now looking to open the latch, which requires a 7-letter word. The first thing that Mike notices is a quote saying, "You'll go down in history." Thinking of US presidents that had exactly 7 letters in their name, they start off with Madison. Jason goes to input the letters and it doesn't work. Moving on to the next one, Ben spots letters hidden around the room, but there is 9 of them. Now it's Ben's turn to go through his trauma as he remembers driving with his friends and saying "you'll go down in history" as they were hit by a truck. It seems the room is built to tamper into his past, and he tells the team to input Rudolph, the name of the song he was listening to. It surprisingly works and the team go outside to see they're in a cabin surrounded by snow. The door behind them automatically closes on its own and they stare at nothing but mountain ranges in front of them. Danny then goes for a walk on the ice and bumps his head on something, causing the ice underneath them to make some noise. Horrified, the group stands still and Danny tells them all to relax as it is just sound effects and they are being watched and will not be harmed. Just then, 2 vents open up and pump freezing cold air onto them. With the cabin completely closed off, the team goes searching for clues and Jason finds a locked door. The rest of the participants meanwhile discover a clue saying true north is a lie. Continuing to look further, they find one coat and decide to share it amongst each other, starting off with Zoe. Ben the moron puts his leg through the freezing cold water and the others surround him and think they may be a clue down the hole. Mike then appears with a fishing rod he grabbed from up a tree. Zoe also finds a compass inside the coat and points it north to discover a frozen bear. With the message from earlier saying true north is a lie, she sticks her hand inside the bear and discovers a magnet, while the rest of the team argue and lose patience over just watching Mike try to fish. Zoe then approaches them and places the magnet on the rod and puts it inside the water. Taking off the coat, the rod latches onto something, and upon pulling it out they discover it is the key, completely frozen solid inside a box. Amanda tries breaking it open, but there is no way that's going to work. They then resort to Ben after they find out he has a lighter. Chucking it to the group, Danny goes to pick it up, but as he does so, he falls from the ice. The team scream and are horrified to see Danny stuck beneath the frozen ice. They go to break him out but lose him. We, on the other hand, can see him stop moving and has drowned to death. The remaining participants realize this is no game, and Mike approaches Ben to ask how Danny fell through. They all start to believe that he caused it and remember Danny talking about a game master who they suspect may be Ben. He attempts to defend himself, but Jason shuts everyone up to tell them that if they don't free the key, they'll all die anyways. He warns them that hyperthermia will switch their brain off and decides the only way to melt the ice is by using their body heat. After hours of holding the item and constant rotating of both the ice and the coat, Jason remembers a time when he was frozen and realizes this test was for him. The key is finally removed from the ice and Jason goes looking for the door. After inserting the key, nothing opens but a door from behind them reveals itself. The team make their way to it, but the ice beneath them starts cracking and they just make it in time. The group find themselves in an upside-down bar when suddenly it begins rising like an elevator. A phone starts ringing on the pool table above them, and as they walk underneath it, it drops right into Mike's hand. It emits a loud frequency, and loud music begins blaring throughout the entire bar. Spotting a door without a handle, the team presume that's what they're looking for. Mike immediately notices that the 8-ball is missing on the pool table. He begins walking towards the other side and Ben saves him as the ground beneath him begins to fall. Hiding on the edges of the room, Amanda climbs to the upside-down bar and attempts to turn the loud music off, but it doesn't work. Amanda continues upwards and finds a locked box with a 4-number pin. Zoe then walks on the edges and panics when she looks underneath. Mike also does the same and gives Zoe a lift upwards to help Amanda find the pin by solving a picture puzzle. A sound then lets off, and the ground beneath the prisoners drop and almost cause Jason to fall. He manages to stabilize himself and Zoe continues with the picture puzzle while Ben takes the biggest gamble of his life. Zoe completes the puzzle, but it looks completely off until Mike realizes it's in reference to the pool balls, and they give her the code one digit at a time. However, it doesn't open, and the sound alerts them to yet another piece of the bar falling 20 stories down. The team struggle to hang on as 3 of them have their weight on one shelf. Zoe attempts to move but doesn't want Jason's help and instead drops to a lower level. Now it's her turn for the past to be shown, but this one is really grueling as we see her parents dead and her the only survivor of a plane crash. Jason saves her from this nightmare and she quickly tells Amanda the code is upside down like the room. Her idea worked, and the knob is found just as the floor breaks even more. 4 of the team then link up top together and Amanda goes to join them. Using her ex-military strength and training, she manages to hang over death and climb towards the team but drops the 8-ball. She goes to retrieve it and she throws the ball up as the floor drops and she dangles for life while holding on the phone. She tells them all it's okay and drops 20 stories down, saving their lives but ending her own. Zoe is in shock and dragged into the next room that is quite dark. The 2 men walk around and the lights around the place begin turning on. They all immediately get stressed out when they discover their own rooms inside the building with files of everything in their lives, with their medical reports, writings, and everything else. Zoe takes Amanda's files and discovers her life and the hardship she's been through. She then tells them all her personal struggles of how she was the only survivor of a plane crash and had to live alone for 10 days. Jason mentions how he was stranded in a snowy area when his boat flipped. He and his friend only had one jacket between themselves, and his friend had hypothermia and died, leaving him as a lone survivor. Ben mentions his story of taking all his friends out on a joyride and killing them all, while Mike mentions that he and 11 others including his brother were stuck in a cave-in, and he could hear his younger brother dying but couldn't help him. Jason is then astonished on how the hell they know all this information to the exact detail of the song being played or the jacket being worn, and address the boxes to them from people they respected. Danny's paper also mentions how there was carbon monoxide poisoning, and everyone in his family was killed but him. All the 6 candidates from the get-go were lone survivors, and are a statistical anomaly. A TV then turns on with Dr. Wooten Yu telling them to open new doors by testing their limits and to live life by the extreme and to place their order in the 5 minutes to receive a complimentary getaway. Everyone immediately gets to their rooms and Mike hangs up some x-rays of someone holding up one finger, someone holding up a fist, and the last one holding up 2 fingers. Ben rushes to them and says it's sign language for EKG when Zoe decides to break the cameras watching them. The team then look for a EKG machine, and with 3 minutes until they're poisoned to death, Jason finds one and approaches Ben with it. Using it on him, it fails as his heart rate is too low and Mike jumps on it. Going to 140, it also fails. And Zoe goes ballistic around them when Jason tells Mike he needs to push his limits and shock him. Mike agrees to do it, and so Jason zaps him, causing his heart rate to push past 200. The test fails and Mike stops breathing, causing Ben to panic. However, the timer ends, and the room is flooded with poison. Jason stays calm and places the stickers on himself and sits in front of the poison while Zoe and Ben struggle. Jason relaxes himself and gets his heart rate to 50, which opens a door. He quickly rushes into it and Zoe refuses to go through it and tells Ben to leave. He does so and the door eventually closes behind him, causing Zoe to fall to the ground, unable to breathe. She crawls to get some oxygen but instead stops moving. Ben tells Jason he should have forced her to safety, but Jason says she made her own decision. Ben, upset, confronts Jason and says it's pretty convenient that there was only one coat and that his friend mysteriously swam off. He demands Jason to admit to killing his friend, and he does so by saying that survival is a choice, not a chance. Getting to solve the next room, they discover a hatch and both of them open it with all their might. However, they discover the handle was laced with something, causing them both to spin out uncontrollably. Their worlds spin and they both hear voices, noises, and are visually distorted until they read a clue saying feel free to leave, but may we note it's best to find the antidote. The room around them turns alive and moves on its own. Unable to even stand up in this optical illusion, Ben finds the antidote, but with only one dose, Jason quickly tackles him, and the two fight over it, knowing the winner will survive. However, Jason twists Ben's leg and manages to crawl to the antidote. Ben doesn't give up though and knocks him over to use the antidote and save his own life. Jason dies, and Ben continues and goes down the hatch, the same place it all started from. Back at the previous room, meanwhile, a cleanup crew enter room 5 and announce they have 2 bodies. The suited up men then find a makeshift oxygen mask, and out of nowhere, Zoe gets up and smacks them from behind. Picking up one of their guns, she continues walking around when Ben grabs a shield and hides in the fireplace as the room closes in on him. Surviving, he quickly rushes outside and spots a board with the participants on it. A voice then surrounds him, and he is told that Jason was the most likely to succeed, yet Ben is here. The man reveals himself and tells Ben to sit down as he has won. Introducing himself as the games master, he tells Ben that from the beginning of civilization it has always been captivating to watch humans fight for their lives, and he has created a way for the people who still have thirst for these games to watch it. Their customers are some of the most powerful people of the world, and every year they demand more complicated rooms, more interesting subjects, and more ways to bet. This year was the lone survivor's year to see if luck had anything to do with it. but the games master admits he was surprised as the man with the lowest odds won the contest. Standing over him, the man puts a rope around Ben's neck and drags him away to kill him. Ben uses the screwdriver from earlier to stab the doctor, and surprisingly though, the main system is overridden, and the doctor is now a player alongside an alive Zoe who emerges and shoots him. Disappearing, Zoe looks around for him and tells Ben to wake up just as she is jumped. Holding her down, Ben comes to the rescue and grabs the gun to kill the monster once and for all. With there being 2 survivors for the first time, the duo escape the prison and are finally free. That night while at hospital, a detective arrives and asks Zoe if she can come with him. Escorting her back to the building she just came out of, the police accompany her inside only to find all the evidence disappeared. The entire waiting room has even vanished, but Zoe tries to explain to the cops what happened, but they ask her if she has ever seen things before. Discovering writing on the wall, it says "No Way Out," and seeing it as an anagram, she sees the word Wu-Tang Yu and tries explaining that this is part of the game, but they do not believe her. 6 months after the entire ordeal, Ben is the new regional sales representative and has put his life together. Zoe is so happy for him, and she hands him a book with the deaths of their fellow participants, with Jason supposedly falling off his bike on DMT, Danny drowning to death, Mike having a heart attack, and Amanda coincidentally dying on a lone rock climbing expedition. All of them died the way they died inside the game, and Ben wants her to let go and stop chasing. But she explains to him the Minnows logo is an impossible object as it's a staircase that turns in on itself and the numbers aren't a pattern on the staircase. 23 and 22 alongside repeated sequence of right angles, they are coordinates to a building in Manhattan. In 2 weeks she is going there and offers Ben in if he wants to, which he agrees. Elsewhere, an aeroplane is about to crash land when a flight attendant finds a bag with an X on it. Opening it up, she rushes to the front of the plane and opens a door for a puzzle to show itself. Saying "I fly without wings, I cry without eyes," the duo put cloud and the door opens only to see themselves flying into a mountain. They go to pull up, but they cannot help themselves, and crash into a mountain when 2 heads pop up and we realize it's a simulator. A man working there approaches a screen with a dark figure on it and is told there is a 4% survival rate. The mysterious man then says he already has the next 2 candidates ready to go. Escape Room Tournament of Champions opens in 2003 when Claire and her mother arrive at home. The mother sends Claire to sleep while she goes to confront her husband Henry, a worker for Minnows. The woman tells Henry she cannot do this anymore and wants a divorce. He tells her they'll talk about it in 1 hour and she says she will not change her mind. Agreeing to it nonetheless, she leaves and goes for a swim in the pool. Claire meanwhile hangs out alone in her room where she plays with the items and collectibles she's found and made over the years. Her mother heads to the spa after her swim and out of nowhere, the door locks shut and the steam continues making its way into the room. She tells Henry she is sorry for what she said and doesn't want to play this game as the heat intensifies. Finding a clue, it says, "I grow in earth, shrink in wind, I drown in water and survive in fire. What am I thinking about the answer?" She says it is rocks and discovers a magnet hidden in the boiling hot rocks. With the heat at deathly levels now, she opens the first lock as well as the second. However, as she does the third, she cannot breathe anymore and slowly falls to the ground and dies. Damn girl, you should have thought about the fact your husband was a serial killer before telling him you want a divorce. But anyways, in the present day, we discover the man behind the screen was Henry. At the airport terminal meanwhile, Zoe sits anxiously at the airport and Ben tells her she can still walk away and back out. Mentioning they are fortunate enough to have even survived the games, Zoe still wants to go and stop Minnows from killing more people. Henry in the meantime arrives at his house and sees a now grown-up Claire who helps her father with the escape rooms. He tells her the stakes this time are the highest it's ever been, and she tells him what does it matter. She is locked away like a rat anyways. She tells her dad he has a pathetic obsession to kill Zoe, and he says no one will expose them and their work. Back at the airport, Zoe begins remembering the flight that killed her parents and walks towards the plane. Just before boarding it though, she can hear her mother talking to her and runs away. In the car park, they rent out a car and as they wait, Ben mentions he had a panic attack in front of a client and got fired from his job. Tossing Zoe the keys, the two get to driving and have about 2 days before they reach their destination. That night, the duo book out a motel and get ready for sleep. Zoe heads to the bathroom and Ben waits in bed but hears a weird sound. Looking outside the window, Zoe begins slamming on the bathroom door and he rushes to open it. The roof quickly begins collapsing and closing in on him. He goes prone but nonetheless is crushed just as he awakens from his nightmare. Zoe immediately goes to his side and tells him it was just a dream. Finally, arriving in New York City, Manhattan, the two arrive at the old abandoned government building. With nothing being there, Zoe is really confused and breaks in. Trying to find clues, a homeless man approaches them and says he'll help them get inside the building when suddenly the car blares its alarms and the man rips Zoe's compass. They chase him, and he sprints for his life and heads to the station. After knocking over a woman, the thief runs into the train and leaves it just as the doors close. Now stuck on the train, the two plan to get off at the next stop. Zoe, however, looks around and with only a few people on the carriage gets a really weird vibe from them. The train begins making weird sounds and Zoe goes to see the conductor but finds him missing. The train carriage then separates and the train diverts from its path. With only a couple people in the carriage, the emergency brake rips off and the train's brakes suddenly initiate, only to come to a halt and toss everyone around. Locked inside the carriage, Zoe correctly deduces this is from Minnows and is part of the escape rooms. A robotic voice then confirms this, and everyone on the train all already know what Minnows is. It seems all of them have already completed the escape rooms and are the winners over the years. This year seems to be the tournament of the champions and panic sets in to all the players. Theo has a meltdown as it's his wife's birthday today. Rachel tells them all that they done it once and can do it again. Nathan remains pretty mellow, and Brianna cannot believe this is happening. The train then makes some sounds and Rachel has a look to see it attached to something, then lets off a massive surge of electricity on top of the carriage, causing everything inside to be conductible. Getting straight to the puzzle, Nathan finds a bag and opens it to find a handle inside. Splitting up, everyone looks around when Brianna discovers a trapdoor. Theo then grabs the door handle and goes to see the conductor but gets zapped. Instead, he uses his leather belt as it isn't conductible and goes inside the room, which lets off electricity. Seeing they need tokens to operate the machine, they spot a sign saying all false advertising must be pulled, which makes Ben rush to an ad and say the letter E is missing in yourself. The group discovers a couple more letters missing from the posters, and Zoe realizes there are exactly 26 handles like the alphabet, and the letters missing are the ones that need to be pulled. Using the rubber lining of the bag, Brianna is tossed keys to cut it up and almost dies. Handed different ones, she cuts the rubber and hands it to all 6 of them. Going to the letter C, Zoe grabs the handle and yanks it for a token to come out. The electricity in the carriage increases though, and Zoe places the C in the machine and the number drops from 9 to 8. Needing 8 more tokens, the team look for missing letters when Brianna drops from the electricity intensifying. It gets to such a dangerous point, and everyone remains prone when Zoe records the proof she came here for. Theo finds all the remaining 3 letters but problematically is zapped and stuck on the metal pole, which causes Rachel to use the rubber to detach him. He is dead, however, and Zoe figures out the remaining letters, to which the group uses the handles and grab the tokens. After inputting the 3 tokens in there, the hatch opens and everyone runs and jumps inside it seconds before they all die. Going down in an elevator, they reach level 1 and take a minute for their fallen friend. Introducing themselves and the groups they were with when they'd done the escape room the first time, Brianna says she was an influencer. Nathan admits to being a priest, and they stop their chat and go inside the next room. Going to the trouble of making an entire underground bank, the camera watches them and the security system is activated. Lasers turn on, and it seems to be because of Brianna's tile she's standing on. Slowly moving without getting chopped by the lasers, she makes it out alive. The system then tells them in 10 minutes all lasers will be activated, and Nathan finds a lollipop and thinks it is a key. Zoe makes her way to the safety deposit boxes and they look at the evacuation plan, opening box after box with keys they found inside the lollipops. The ATM machine then activates and speaks to say for payment following the death of a loved one, please enter your PIN. Ben simultaneously notices that all the boxes are numbers except for Sonia. They open the box and diamonds fall all out of it. Being really sharp, Brianna also opens a box for Sonia and finds 2 blank stacks of notes. Ben realizes the payment of death is called blood money and they need to put blood on the bills. Rachel then accidentally activates all the lasers, but she falls and they deactivate before she hits them. Zoe puts her blood on the notes to discover 0526 on the bills, and Nathan puts it into the machine, causing clocks in the room to go haywire. The ATM then prints out a receipt saying plot a course by the hours of the day, count the minutes every step of the way. Realizing the different numbers on the clocks, Nathan says it is a way to go through the death traps. Nathan gets to it and it seems to be working. He places lollipops on the tiles that are safe and continues through them. However, one of the tiles causes a lock to reveal itself and it needs 3 numbers. The tile then reveals a clue saying money makes the world turn, don't let it stop or else it all ends. The 3 minutes until they're lobotomized, Nathan takes a gamble and walks through the tiles not knowing if he lives or dies. Winning his gambles, we always know the gambler eventually runs out of luck. And as expected, he activates the lasers and knocks himself out. The rest of the group fortunately survive and move Nathan off the tile. Brianna smartly enough deduces the clue and moves the safe's lock to reveal a transparent graph. Brianna tosses it over to Zoe, who manages to see the graph and offers to direct them. Ben goes to help the unconscious Nathan while Zoe directs them to the exit. With 10 seconds to go until the lasers activate, Zoe goes to join them and with quick thinking makes it to the exit with millisecond accuracy and saves herself. Nathan is slapped awake and told off by Ben, who tells him he's an arrogant mutt. The cave they're in suddenly begins to fall in on them and they all escape and find themselves on a beach. Looking around what they presume is all screens, Brianna discovers a camera that says the message "it will last longer." Obviously not talking about me, Brianna takes a picture and the entire beach changes color. The camera reveals another clue saying drop your anchor at Hourglass Bay. Comparing the picture with the beach and realizing a boat is missing, the team walk around for some clues. What the team failed to see though is that the sand is not normal sand. finding a ship in a bottle and other clues that mean nothing for the time being. They find a shipwreck saying blind love on it. Searching the wreckage, they manage to find a working metal detector and use it on the sand. Zoe instead takes a look at the ominous mannequins and moves a towel to see SOS written on the sand. Discovering something underneath the sand, all 5 of them use shovels to discover an anchor. Moving it towards the shack as a key, it is tied down pretty hard. The anchor eventually disconnects from the line and the rope gets sucked into the sand. Rachel begins freaking out and starts sinking into the sand. Trying to grab Ben's hand, she can't reach it and gets sucked beneath. Nathan then ties a rope around himself and tells the team to hold on the other side of it. He then jumps into the sand and Rachel immediately pops her head out. She manages to climb out of the sand with the rope, and now Nathan attempts to do the same. However, the line snaps and Nathan sinks. Placing the anchor into the door, it opens up and they all make their way inside the shack. Noticing the fridge is locked and maybe their exit, they search to plug the fridge into the power point and turn on the switch. Everything outside changes up and night envelops the beach with stairs popping up on the light tower. Zoe rushes out to climb the tower and the rest of them clear the debris. Looking through the telescope, the light stops on a sign saying "I can't see you." Ben rushes out to help Zoe down but gets stuck in the sand in the process. He manages to pull himself out and looks through the wreckage while Zoe looks at something in the lighthouse. Ben realizes the mannequin from earlier is the answer to the puzzle and goes to it. Taking out one of its eyes, he crawls through the sand and calls Zoe, who tells him there is another way out. Both doors open at the same time and all 4 remaining participants argue with each other which door is the right one to take. Rachel agrees with Zoe and so does Ben, who all climb the stairs to the lighthouse. Brianna, however, gets stuck inside the shack. With everything being swallowed into the sand, Ben climbs the ladders, and Brianna goes into the other exit. Ben problematically loses his grip on the ladder and falls to the sand and is eaten by it. In shock to her friend dying, Zoe is dragged into the exit and is upset beyond compare at losing Ben. Immediately having a meltdown blaming herself and her stubbornness that killed Ben, she believes it is all her fault. Rachel mentions that Minos is to blame and they need to be dealt with once and for all. She then admits to being born with something that does not allow her to feel physical pain. Telling Zoe to imagine what she went through in the first escape room, she wants it all to end. The duo then hear the street and make their way up a latch, and have finally made it outside the escape room. Brianna, however, comes running in and tells them don't let the hatch close, but it's too late. It seems they're still in the game, and Brianna says when the timer runs out, acid gets sprayed everywhere and they need to find more keys to escape. The first clue they have is a message saying "I'll always be watching over you," with a woman holding a key for them. Discovering a ladder on the fire escape, Brianna climbs it to the rooftop and finds a key locked onto the rails. She unlocks it easily though and tosses the key. With 10 seconds until it rains, the girls open the shutter to find another locked door. The acid then comes pouring down and it burns them. It stops raining and with 1 minute to go they see a TV broadcast talking about collecting the rain. A phone simultaneously rings, and the girls rush to the phone booth that is locked. Planning on using the acid to burn the lock, they search for any plastic that hasn't already burned. Finding a tomato sauce container, they place it in the rain and rush undercover. Getting burned from excess raindrops, the acid eventually stops, and they burn the key off the chain and answer the call, but discover a clue about a cab. Rachel finds an umbrella and chucks it at Zoe, who uses it just as the acid drops down. Zoe discovers yet another clue saying to pick up after 3 rings, and Rachel does exactly that, which opens the cab door for Zoe to get inside. As the rain stops though, the cab door automatically closes and both girls panic as they try to make their way in. With seconds until the rain, Rachel and Brianna give up and stand below the acid and suffer a very excruciating death while Zoe gets sucked into the taxi seat. At Minos Central Control, meanwhile, a worker informs Henry they have an error in the transition chute. Discovering a malfunction, Henry sees a final room he did not authorize, and it appears this design was approved by himself 2 days ago, and this confuses him. Nonetheless, Henry tells his worker not to call it in and to play it out. Zoe in the meantime is awakened by a Minos guard telling Claire he'll buy her some time. Zoe wakes up and Claire introduces herself, with Zoe catching onto Claire's briefcase and realizing she's the one that made the escape rooms and that her mother's name was Sonia. Claire was confident that Zoe would figure it all out and explains her father locked her in here and forced her to do everything. She even mentions that Ben is alive and proves it by showing Ben safe in a room. However, her father's guards have found him and they chuck him into a death room. The only way to save Ben now is from Henry's computer in his room, but Claire needs to figure out a puzzle to escape her confinement. If she gets the answer wrong 3 times, the oxygen will be sucked out and she will die. The puzzle changes every couple of seconds though, and Zoe is told that Henry said Claire will never be able to get out on her own. Zoe realizes the answer and looks from the corner of the room to see it was all a visual hologram. There are 3 images on it though, and what they all have in common is that the golden ratio exists for all 3 images. Inputting 1.618 on the code, it doesn't work, and I'm not going to lie. I have no idea or what mathematical language they used to change their answer, and this time it works just as Claire's friend returns and drops to the ground. Henry then approaches his daughter with a gun and tells Zoe she is ruining everything. The bodyguard simultaneously shoots Henry and traps him in Claire's cell. He demands to be released. The two girls run off and the bodyguard laughs at him. Claire immediately rushes to her dad's computer and quickly hacks the system and saves Ben. She then reveals to Zoe they started letting people win to make a tournament of champions, but Zoe is the only one to ever really beat them. She tosses Zoe her dad's keys and tells her to go save Ben, also mentioning that she locked the Minnows workers out so that evidence will be there this time around. Zoe rushes out the front door and thanks Claire for everything. Cops immediately arrive at the building and take out all evidence and corpses, when Zoe also appears and rushes onto the scene to find Ben. Seeing him, Ben asks for a minute alone and tells Zoe when he went through the sand there was a guy waiting there and hands Zoe her compass. Zoe finally says it is all over and they are safe once and for all. Back at Henry's estate, Claire tells her father he stole everything from her. She tells him that she lost her mother long before she died, that she showed her true colors to her mother, but she threatened to send her somewhere for a while and that's the reason why Claire killed her. Henry is also to blame as he stole all her ideas and gave her no credit despite the grandiose of the rooms and the money coming in. Claire eventually tells her dad that both he and her mother will be proud of what she is going to do next. With that, she kills her father and the movie ends. Feel free to watch some of my other recaps, and I'd like to know if you caught on from the beginning that Claire was an evil sociopath.